Uh, this is WNDC. NDC. WNDC. NDC stands for We in the and you ain't NDC. And the subject basically can be entitled when monogamy becomes monotony due to its insanity. I have been following several little podcasts of people out there, and I'm gonna try to catch a couple of those snippets and offer those to you. For the people on Instagram, you're not going to be able to hear a lot of the sound bites that I might be sharing, just due to the mere fact that I haven't really set up that portion of my restream yet. But what really gets me about this whole subject is just the mere fact that, first and foremost, we found ourselves in this today's society, trying to follow a outdated state of existence that no longer has its purpose in the society to which we live in. And yet, we have people who like to play the monogamy game. Where did monogamy come from? That you're only supposed to have one and one. You can't say it was the Bible, because 2/3 of the people in the Bible were not technically monogamous. And therein lies a lot of the problem when people try to go, it said one man and one. Yes, it also says it has stipulations for everything from services to concubines to wives to slaves. And basically the law of relationships is to be good to each other, be humane, be respectful, and have purpose. Treat all of those people with value. And for people of color, it's even more difficult, because here in the United States, we call ourselves African Americans or black or whatever, and we proclaim that we come from Africa and whatnot. And even though many parts of Africa, many of their relationship statuses are not structured in the same monogamous state, although all of the responsibilities does come with it. And yet, here we are in 2021, and we've got more populations of people of color that can't quite find, perfect. They can't find their soulmate. They can't find their wife or their husband. And, we've got the highest amount of divorces and the highest amount of single women and men, mostly women, who are unpartnered. And, women yet outpopularize men, and yet, we've got these clashes that we've had. I really don't know where to really get into the nitty-gritty of it, because it's just so much. It's just so much for people of color, especially because we have been emancipated into the rut that the rest of the world has struggled with, and yet we're still the most how would I say it? We were the most conservative in our structure. That doesn't mean that we don't do our fair share of dirt. It's just that we have a custom of keeping our dirt to ourselves, and let the white man know, or don't act like this, and we really honestly have been miseducated, and therefore it's not a big thing for us to get into all of the bushwhacked and the run astray and the AKs that we've established. It's too late for all of that. What we have to do now is to understand that this is not as cut as dry. We don't live in a cut and dry world no more. And especially for people of color, because see, it does take a village. It takes a village to make a community. It takes a community to make, a race, a culture. And yet we suffer from so many of the ills of this new world and how we found ourselves in it. From the time the Emancipation Proclamation bequeathed all people of color and people that enslaved people in this country to be equally free, per se. The first and very first issue that came about is due to the mere fact that we were still in an ignorant state. Not all of us, but the majority of us. You just say you're free, and free to do what? You're free to do whatever what? What does the ever stand for? And it was supposed to be our community that had the responsibility of training, of educating, of preparing us to be people, communities in good standings. And yet, you can't really blame us for really how we've gotten this far. Only God can honestly be, put into that whole thing, because we're still suffering from a great deal of ignorance. This structure that we believe to be ours within our very body, and yet many of us have been manipulated and structured and trained into, by way of the slave Bible mentality. Not that there's a issue with religion. There's an issue with how it was basically told to us to believe. So we believed that that's the reason why we call things like pimps in a pulpit. We believe the pastor, but yet when the pastor does something, or this mentality of do what I say and not what I do is no longer a thing now. And yet here we are struggling because we're mismatching all of these little expectations believed to be something. Oh, monogamy is, you're supposed to be true to your only one self and this, that, and the other. And yet, in today's society, monogamy in its purest state is exactly how it was told to us in an earlier state in our communities. You were supposed to keep your legs closed, and you were to go out in court, and you were to keep yourself pure because you wanted to make sure that you were presenting your purest state. And so it was expected for the man to be and the woman to be virgins of sorts. And they were to make this union that was to never be broken. The expectations are also have not changed much, although they've taken many of the Q words out, the obey, and many of those other things like that. But what really gets me the most is for people who actually go as far as to have a church wedding, have a wedding in front of their family and their God and their faith. And, they take these vows of for richer and for poorer, for sickness and health, forsake all others. This partnership that's built on not just your sexual gratification, but your purpose to come together and build a family and build a structure and raise kids and prepare these kids for the future and be an example to your race and to your community and all these other things of that nature. And yet that hasn't quite been what we've been doing in the past, 40, 60 years. And it shows in our population of single people, our current current state of conflict between genders. We found ourselves in a state where many of today's generations of genders really honestly believe this feministic structure that really honestly is not as cut and dry as what many people today have identified it. And I've mentioned in past broadcasts about this woman Edith Villar and how the feminist movement, literally condoned, like Muslims condoned Salman Rushdie. They was really pissed. They really came out of pocket with how they really had death threats on this woman and how her image of what she described feminism to be. And yet the original feminists were totally against our basic structure we believe we exist in. So true hardcore feminists of the time were people that considered housewives to be slaves, to be victims of the patriarchy, and victims of misogyny. And so in theory, the initial feminist mentality was not only to be equal to a man, but to be totally equal. And a lot of that was done by way of the mere fact that during that time and era, it wasn't just, a heterosexual agenda. And for that reason, many of the people who prescribe to this 1950s lifestyle mentality were actually enemies to feminist movement. And while Edith Villar was basically stating that actually that's the opposite, the power of the wife, this housewife thing is the ultimate power. And in many cases, what that era and whatnot started was a enforced ignorance in the identification of each gender by each gender. And therefore, it became an insult at any form and time that a man was to basically profess to know anything about women. It became a no-no. Only women could speak for women. And yet only women can speak for men. And when men speak for themselves, women have the right to proclaim them ignorant of sorts. We've lost the ability to have empathy between the genders because we've had these self-professed folklores and stereotypes that are now almost generally or genetically ingrained into our people. That I don't need no man can tell me, no this, that, and the other, has caused them the inability to actually be capable of partnering. There's no sense in the systematic structure of what we would call that soulmate. If you are a woman and you've grown to a point where you can trust a man, period, and you feel the need to not necessarily be comfortable at any time considering them somebody worth forsaking all others. And what forsaking all others means is at the point that you take your vows and decide to be a partnership. Forsaking all others means even including your own gender, your own race, your family, anyone else outside of you too. The Bonnie and Clyde thing, it's us, we down for it. We're in together and nobody can pull us apart. Let no man pull us under. And yet we've had more times and whatnot that the biggest infraction now has become fidelity. And yet the whole sense of fidelity is kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of a hypocritical statement when we're facing these kind of situations where people are meeting people and they consider themselves dating or exclusive or whatnot, and yet they take on this kind of responsibility as if they were in the same old school dynamic where, you know, she's never been with another man and he's never been with another woman, and so all they've had is each other. But now that's not the way it is. We've got mileage on us, we've got bodies, we've got bones, we've got secrets, we've got times into which we believe that, you know, we deserve the same provisions into which we believe, you know, we have in this whole situation. The woman makes the final say in a marriage. You know, all a man can do is sit back and submit to her in the form of fashion of, I give all of what I have to you, and, you know, and let's go make babies and you know, and the right thing. And yet I was looking at another post earlier on Facebook, and the subject actually came up in a way of stating, you know, should a wife be held totally accountable for a man's sexuality? Should she give him some whenever he wants it? Should she be the sole proprietor of his sexual desire? Should she, you know, basically keep his sack empty and, you know, and his belly fed, and, you know, and keep him in a state where no one can steal him from you? And yet the you know, pretty much a lot of the meat and potatoes of a lot of the comments from women was a manner of saying, you know, well, no, she shouldn't have to be this, that, and the other, is that, and the other. He should just keep it in his pants, or this, that, and the other. When you know, if we were to flip that whole question and say, should a man be the sole proprietor of a woman's sexual desires, every woman would say, hell yeah. You know, you bought it, you deal with it. You know, you order, you buy, you eat. And the overall perspective in this is just, first and foremost, is the mere fact that I'm not sure where it happened, but I know it happened because I can see it. I can see it in the major amounts of conflicts between the genders, you know, where we lost some sense of understanding how, you know, being a helpmate means that you have a sense of a desire to help and therefore be helped. This equal thing, this you know, fair exchange that seems to have grown over top heavy in the female version side, and yet more females who overpopulate the males seem to still struggle with this ability to actually bastardize the whole game in itself. You know, you always hear people talk about, oh, I want a man, I want a woman, I want somebody to love, I want somebody who loves me unconditionally. And yet everyone who asks for somebody to love them unconditionally don't necessarily, excuse me, don't necessarily love unconditional to anyone. And we're hustling backwards as a supposed race of people, more so because the mere fact that it's not that other races of people around the world and whatnot are not getting it right. Many of them have a higher ratio of successful and or productive marriages, partnerships and whatnot. And yet for some reason, how is it that people of color, especially Black Americans, you know, have gone from the top of the stability level to where we are today? How has it become such a major conflict that men and women cannot speak to each other in a manner in a sense of apathy? No, empathy. You know, I've heard women that sit back and say, you know, how can you tell when a man's lying? His mouth is open. I've had men who have sat back and said, how can you tell when a woman's lying? Her mouth is open. And yet, with all of these things that we unconsciously indulge in on a daily basis, I find it awkward how no one could actually just stop, think, focus, and then react over to back then. You know, the biggest bottom line to all of this is just the mere fact that, well, how can you want something that you don't want? You know, let me find the first
How old is you? And maybe it comes back down.
Let me find the first.
The treatment is governed by the hierarchy. Men are not trying to impress women. They are trying to impress manhood, not men. Manhood, the idea of what being a man is. I don't impress girls to impress girls. I impress girls to impress myself. I tell myself, yeah, you're a man because you get bare, girl. And now I'm trapped in this relationship and I can't feed that ego. I can't do the things that makes a man feel like a man. This is all subconscious a lot of the times, but it's happening. A man in a relationship is a tamed lion watching his friends roar all over the place while he meows in his household. As a whole, I believe until more men acknowledge patriarchy, not the word or the dictionary definition, but that innate feeling that makes him value his feelings and wants and desires above women, tries to create a fairer mind, you will continue to see these things, because rarely will a being be beholden to someone they deem lesser than themselves.
And maybe it comes back down to if that woman listened to that individual for the reason why he cheated, because you can hear him out and you might just say, oh fuck it, I don't know, like whatever, and carry on with the same fuckery, and then he keeps up and it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, but you just said earlier that a lot of men cheat just because it's an action, not because there's anything wrong.
Oh, and that's the
Now, let's get to these Q words, these triggered things that most of us basically allow to affect our instincts. You know, hey Ken, what's happening? I often desire to ask people when they bring up these offenses, exactly what is the definition of cheating? Now, people cheat on tests, they cheat in life, they cheat death. But when you cheat in a relationship, it's a whole different kind of cheating. It's the kind of cheating that, you know, we used to hear. If you lie, you steal. If you steal, you kill. If you cheat. And yet, cheating is an accusal offense where someone feels wronged and therefore cheated. And I've always found that in a relationship situation to be even more awkward, just due to the mere fact of just that topic that we spoke about, where is a wife, if a wife's duty is to take care of and offer her husband sexual gratification, is it her responsibility to make sure that his needs are met, and vice versa? Is it a husband's responsibility to make sure that a wife's needs are to be met? And when you really pull apart, what is this thing called cheating? What stands out the most about cheating, yeah, man, you know, what stands out the most about cheating is not the act, it's a deception. In most cases, what makes cheating hurt more is to find out when it happened, how it happened, and why they were not alerted that this occurred. They would have wished that someone would have come to them prior to, you know, if you're going to cheat, tell me before you do it and let me decide what I want to do about it. You hear that from some people, and yet all of these things revolve around what we call fidelity. And yet, somehow or another, that whole thing called love, that whole thing called respect, that whole thing called partnership or purpose or parenting or all these other things, I'm not sure where or how they all got died. They got, dropped down and cheating. Now, in the book by Edith Villar, she speaks about how women consider men their property of sorts, and therefore the sense of finding that their man has been with another woman is more of a offense, not so much in just the mere fact that he did it, but in the offense that another woman took what was hers. And that brings back that same kind of question of if you are the mate or the wife of your husband, and at any form of or fashion that you find yourself where he may have a sense of neglect or a sense of desire. Back in those days, the old women used to tell the young women, baby, when you get married, you make sure you lock your man down. You make sure that there's absolutely nothing that he might be into or he might want, that you have to basically do whatever. You keep that man's sack dry and you keep his belly full. You girl, and there's, if he want a circus clown, baby, you got your clown on, whatever it takes, because you don't want to leave your man in a neglected state enough for somebody to get out there and snatch them. And trust and believe, back in the old days, our ancestry women, they didn't trust women. They knew that there's always a woman out there looking for somebody else's man. Because, it's a thing, you can tell a man who has found someone you can see it, you can smell it on them. Women, for men, it's been the awkward question of all questions. Why is it that a man can be single and have nobody, and when they find somebody, all of a sudden, all of these come out of the woodwork at them, and it's like that wedding ring is like, it's like a lure, and all these wide mouth bastards see it and just decide to flutter over there. How this instinct of side woman, sister wife, cleanup woman, exist into such a manner that even today, while women always take offense towards a man and his inability to keep his pants up, none of them actually, admit that, technically speaking, it's like that old R&B song, "Woman to Woman." Now, where we're at today is where we truly, honestly believe it's always been one of those kind of things where, the man comes home and this, that, and the other, and that's BS. What it is that we've lost several generations of explanations from a lot of the generation prior to us as to how they dealt with the realities of things that went down. People still can't. people still can today understand things were different. No Instagram or YouTube or cell phone. There were people who would come home and walk in the house. Mom would say, "Baby, it's almost time." I'm gonna get it right. It's dinner time. Going down to Auntie so-and-so's house and ask if your daddy's there. If he's there, tell her to tell him the dinner's almost ready. He needs to come up. And she made plenty, so if the kids are hungry, they're more than welcome to come join too. Now, some people might not have seen that. Now, some people might not have seen that in a direct thing, but we all know there were things like that in our culture that existed. Papa was a rolling stone. Wherever he led his hat was his home. And yet, we had northern families and southern families, and and while we talk all about these other little things, the black folks, that we shouldn't be this way, and yet many of us who claim to have come from some kind of a slave culture too, fail to realize, well, the people who made you, no matter how ugly it is, lived a different kind of structure. When Mesa would come out and, and have his little bed with this, that, and the other, the missus didn't decide to take all the slaves and take him out the house and take half and the whole nine. And yet, the same thing came with this fear us and them have the big black buck, and we've danced around the reality that Miss Jane, Master's wife, had a little thing for the little buck over here, this, that, the other, and even some of the female help too, and yet we talk about the atrocities that they used to have, where they used to break bucks that all the women in our community in these slave or situations were just trying to get a hold of, and they would, and the master would come out and break the buck right in front of him and take his masculinity and the whole nine. And yet, here we are in 2021, and we've got everything. We've got LGBTQ, we've got swinging, we've got, we've got non-monogamous, we got monogamy, we've got feminism, we've got all these other freedom, yet we ain't got the sense that God gets to realize that. And I think what makes it even more difficult as a black man is the mere fact that I come from a black woman. And so I desire to have her to hold and to cherish one at all times starts with the created me. And anytime that I have any kind of alternative opinion about any other female out here today, the first thing they would say is, well, how you gonna say that? If you're gonna call me this, that, and the other, then you call mama one. I'm like, no, I'm not calling my mama one. My mama told me that people like you are that too. Now, half of the problem we got is that, even for men to sit back and say, my mama said, they would argue with me, but they're going to argue with my mama. Yeah, nowadays, we got it like that. Women don't respect nobody. They don't respect each other. They don't respect men. They don't respect God. And I think a lot of the reason why they don't respect this religion thing is because all of it's revolved around men. God, Jesus, all of these people, men. Ain't no patron saint, with boobs. all men, and this kind of instinct where, you know, men ain't this, men ain't that, because you have you'll never be, you know, supreme because you have a penis. And yet, even for most of us who know the science of how we're created, we're X's until somebody loses a leg, and yet, you know, want to gain another one or would not. Yet, you know, we got people, hey king, hey queen, and yet nobody can actually even respect the sense of royalty and its responsibilities as well, because most kings and queens were not monogamous. They were above that. Just like we want to now get into this whole big life, high value people. We want to get into the movers and shakers of people who live a la vida loca at that higher over 6-figure level, and yet not understand how at those levels they actually, many of them, you know, make it an importance to write their concubine, their extra off on their taxes. You know, he gets an executive secretary and she gets a pool boy. You know, when Kobe got caught, he had the best kind of mentors out there. And so while everybody else was saying, I take all his money, I do this, that, and the other, these right kind of people who structured, you know, all of that of what he became, told him, see, son, what you do now is you say you sorry, and you go buy the biggest ring you can find. And then you watch yourself more. You check yourself, or you record yourself. You stop trying to, you know, indulge into random thoughts. Kind of like in the story with Will Smith and Ali and his wife. He fell in love. That was his wife. Think about what I'm saying now, because this is, you know, the issue of the situationship we can't get past. And they sit back and he's like, man, you loving this woman and this, that, the other, and I want to make her a wife. And they said, Brother Muhammad, we understand what you're saying, but this woman that you, I mean, we can agree, but this is not the kind of woman you marry. This is the woman you keep, but it's not the woman you marry. And that structure, that definition, that reality doesn't sit in the crawl of anyone, especially people of color, especially women of color today, whom are very uncomfortable about any form of scrutiny that they may have to deal with today. It's almost genetic, you know, even when their own girlfriends say, girl, you crazy. Yeah, I know, but you know. I hate when, yeah, I know, that's why I had your back. I was like, how dare you call my girlfriend crazy? No one damn well. But I'm not going to let no man tell you that, because that's what we're supposed to do. We sisters. We're supposed to look after each other, after your part, and this, that, and the other. And that's the doggone bamboozle that our black British women fell for all the way back in the early 70s by all of these white women. Most of them don't even like men. Most of them don't even like black women. Like a little black dick in their life. But and so those same people, you use this, oh, I'm down with my sisters, but your sisters ain't down with you, because if this sisterhood was what you claim to be, they would be more support enough to not be chasing your man with the ring or without. They know. They can sell them on you. And yet, this is up the actuality of another thing. We can't be transparent. We can't talk about these things because they're triggered. It's for you to keep them to yourself, to be on the down low. In the same manner that they want a man out there, most women who want a 6-figure man at a certain level that they expect to be at because they make this, are incapable of finding one. who would be perfectly okay with the exact number of bodies on you that you've had. Oh, well, how many men have you been with? I mean, define Ben. Now we've got all these trysts that are going on. We've got this Derrick Jaxn stuff, and we've got all these other little things, and we've got the Will Smiths and his wives and all these other things, and yet on a day-to-day basis, a black man and most black women will admit that one of the things they hate more than anything else is every day we pick up these doggone smartphones and we go over to these media doggone things. We've got more and more people perpetuating the negative stereotypes and folklores of all the people in general, as if there is a total impossibility that there may be a couple special occasions to this, and for that reason they would be more defensive and going, hey, wait a minute, not all of them. And when somebody older folk or something like that might stop into the whole, sausage fest and say, well, I used to have a good one, but he passed away. And now I'm stuck out here with all you heifers. And realize that, we genetically are waking up into ourselves. And yet we want to call ourselves tribal. We want to call ourselves this, that, and the other. And yet we've got so much of this miseducation into our instincts that we can't stop. There should be no way that any system cannot handle the truth. There's no way that none of us can not aspire to be the greatness that Big Mama and everybody wished that we could have been. There's no reason why more great-great-grandmothers, are looking down from heaven at their generations that are now becoming the best men that they wished that they could have married. And can't understand that they've also created a lot of men who are more than capable of being support, but it still takes a certain training that they don't have. It's not that you have to be submissive, but if you have a dominance, there's a way that dominant women can have a submissive man and be with him in a manner where he would swear up and down he was the biggest dominant of all because she said so. And yet we're getting to a point where things are getting so bad for companionship we go out and get a pet. And yet it's the same thing. If you can train a pet, you can train people, you can train a partner, but it requires you to understand that we all really honestly are really making a muck of this whole existence of who we are in comparison to all the other people of color, our non-people of color, looking on many of us. And that's the reason why a lot of people have an issue with more interracial relationships happening. A lot more of these other races swooping down and getting some of the best in our bunch and snatching them out of our realities and communities to a point where they don't have you on the side. And even when they can have you or this, that, and the other, there's no way of you sitting back and saying, your man was sleeping with me, and without them saying, so what? Hillary Clinton was raised in that kind of mentality, and yet you want to act like you want to make enough money to be in a partnership with somebody who's going to be working right next to people. You're not ready for this. This is an Epstein world. A bunch of black folks that are too doggone afraid to understand that none of us are cut and dry. There is no alpha, and there's no alpha, and there's no beta, and there's no this, that, and the other. There's no straight, there's no gay. Because there's now so many different idiosyncrasies that we have to custom make. And the problem with custom making is that we get so doggone caught up into all the triggers and whatnot that have kept us what we would call safe, That we're not capable of being able to invest into a good breed of something. You can't go to the pet store and say, this is a nice one. I'm going to work with this one. We're all pound puppies. Going to the pound and trying to pick up a pet without any doggone understanding of the pedigree involved, enough to understand that this is also an abused pet. Not a bad one. As long as you don't put a black hat on. As long as you don't call him a biscuit eater. But nobody tells you that. I can't figure out why all of a sudden this perfectly good pet snapped. I started all this because I really wanted to go into so many different directions with this.
The physical, the action. You get it?
But there's an emotional part of it that made you.
If it's a serial, or if it's somebody that you keep
like
matching,
an affair or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah,
there'll be
but
emotion,
an affair is definitely emotional. But both of you just said earlier that men can just have sex with someone. It's just an act. So there's not. It's not necessarily because there is also that thing that a lot of men cheat and there's nothing wrong at home. They're in a perfectly great place. Yeah.
But this is what I'm trying to say about the model. The model that we're working with, I don't believe it's working.
Okay.
Like the model of relationships.
The model that we're
The model of relationships of being a normal, go off into the sunset, man, woman, 2.4 children. The model that we've been sold is not working, and the statistics show that the model ain't working. Now, that's not to say there aren't monogamous relationships that can work, but I'm saying the model, the stats show. If you were to ask all of your girlfriends, how many of them have been cheated on? How many would you say? Majority, right. So that means, that's not saying the majority of them cheat, but that's saying it's happening. Do you know what I'm saying? So the model ain't working. So when do we get to the point when we say, do you know what? Let's sit down and have a conversation. Like, I'm a man, you're a woman, cool. There's a higher probability that I'm probably going to want to have sex with another woman at some point in time in this relationship. Don't mean I don't love you. How viable is it?
And when you...
How viable is it?
Then doesn't that just become a polygamy then?
Not necessarily. You have to tailor make your own relationships. I've always said to people they have to tailor make their own relationship.
Yeah, that's one thing I do agree. I do believe that
I'll say that.
I think a lot of relationships nowadays we've been sold like this is what a relationship should be, and we're not actually saying, okay, like I said, this is what works for me. Actually, I don't mind. Like, okay, I'm happy for you to get a pass every 12 months or every 14 months. You can like or whatever, or every 2 years or whatever. But I think that's because it's linked to women not understanding that men can just have sex and it's just sex. We understand that because we're not built like that. So then how does this work?
Conversations like this, we have to understand these conversations to try and understand one another.
And that's where the rubber hits the road. Because the bottom line here is that, first and foremost, men are men and women are women. It's just the way it is. Because we have an innie and you have an outie, it's totally different. Men can actually have sex with a jar of peanut butter, and as long as they didn't have to come back and say, baby, I'm in love with Jiffy, would a woman have to sit back there and have the same offense? You're cheating on me, peanut butter? Come on, man. I mean, it's that serious. The book, The Men Were From Venus and Mars and Women Are From Venus and whatever, has a little point to it, but we're also talking about people of color, and that makes it even worse because we want to be point and grab or all black folks are alike. We treat each other as if we expect for all black folks to be alike enough that we say all men are alike or all women or this, that, and the other, more than we can actually say some or a few or these particular types or this, that, and the other, just due to the mere fact that we're not exposed to enough of them globally to understand global. And you have to realize that part of what makes this so bad is not our fault right now, but it's our fault to the mere fact that we can't understand that people of color have never been at this population, at this value of life entirely around the earth historically. And all the future we've gotten since way back in the Egyptian era. And for that reason, we have to really stop, think, focus, and then react to the fact that this is not just about you personally, but you personally have to understand that unless you're capable of mastering the you that you are as an individual and stop trying to join these kind of mentalities, you will never get one, because what you want totally distracts you from this group thing. And you cannot have somebody down for your back when you got other people who got no concern for your own good back. Oh, I'm down for my sisters. I will always doggone defend my sisters, and your sisters are your side pieces to your man, or your sisters are the people that can't wait for you to get another, any this and the other. Oh, who you with? Let me check out, or this and the other. And none of you play well with each other enough to even think about the possibility of polyamory, because you can't, you're selfish, emotional possessors of your own pedigree. You really think that because I'm woman, hear me roar. You're not a white woman. Most of the white women who basically wrote this stuff and put it in your head and make you think that, you know, that they were all down like you're down, most of them are growing extinct. They were not Kardashians, but they were Kardashian-like.
How old did you when you started?
I started when I was 28.
Oh, so it was pretty late on in your
28
not late, but it was quite mature.
Let's say 38, 37, 38, yeah.
And you were faithful for all those times.
Yep.
Now, okay, back to you, Richie, because you're the serial cheater. What do you class? What do you class as cheating? Is it penetrative? That's it?
There's more to it. There's more to it, you know. There's emotional cheating.
But what type of cheating did you do the most?
When I was young, rich, and living it, you know.
You can't keep saying young. How old are you now?
32.
And then what was the last time you cheated?
What was my last serious? Probably about. When I was probably about 28.
How old are you now?
32.
Oh, so it's not that long ago, it's like 4 years ago.
It's long enough, man. Trust me.
But you haven't been in another relationship since then.
I've had a few since then.
Oh, and you've been faithful. So do you think it's just a phase that men go like? It's a phase. Or wait, did you get therapy? Did you say?
I've been through therapy.
Okay, so the therapy is what helped you kind of identify your own issues, and then you was able to kind of
be self-aware, be able to self-correct behavior, be able to understand behavior.
Self-aware.
You know, once you understand why you're doing something, you can almost, just by understanding it, you can, you know, counteract it, prevent it. You know,
that's actually great. I'm glad you said that. I think a lot of men as well, they don't understand not to put themselves into situations that could lend them to cheating. Do you get what I mean? So you go to certain environments where you know there's going to be loads of girls. You know you're not necessarily strong enough to say no, sorry. What is that about?
I mean, we're supposed to lock ourselves in the house. Like,
you don't put yourself in situations that you're going to end up cheating, because you don't just fall for
you
somebody.
don't fall into cheating, though. You don't. It doesn't just happen like that.
That's what I'm saying. You don't just fall into cheating. There's a process. But at some point,
that process is the women that facilitate the cheating. You know,
who are the men cheating with?
There's some women.
And do most of the time these women know that they're cheating with these men?
Sometimes we don't know that.
Sometimes we.
Huh? We don't.
Have you ever cheated with a man?
Yeah.
Have I ever what?
Cheating. It's always about the man. And yet, most men cannot cheat without a woman, another woman. And it seems to most men that one of the insults that they seem to be expressing the most is the mere fact that, how can you let another woman get you when I got you? Like, you know, recognized game, or, you know, how can you let somebody just sneak up and take something that belongs to me? And yet, it's not as simple, you know. And in a lot of cases, you have to realize there's a lot of really good professional cheaters. You'd have to have the patience of Job to be able to pull off, you know, not being able to handle the temptations of a good woman. And the more that you find yourself in a higher and higher tax bracket, They're there. They're there. And yet it's almost as if most of the women who bitch the most about cheaters and can't find a man or something like that are usually people that are ill-equipped to be able to handle a life and a lifestyle beyond the Kennedys, out in with the royals of other countries and whatnot. Being able to not just go to Jamaica, but they go to Monaco, you know, and they're exposed to high-end entertainment and realize that part of the reason why they're there is because they afforded to be there due to their income value level. And yet people want people to really live a Little House on the Prairie lifestyle of the rich and famous. That makes no sense. And the worst thing is there are more women with way too much money and too much education for them to actually think that they can actually argue how much sense that's supposed to make. That don't make no damn sense. And yet, the value of a woman is measured by your girlfriends instead of the Kardashians. What is it that our Armenians are teaching their women? Because they're not white women. They're a whole different kind of thing. And most of y'all, while you want to stick up for each other, you don't stick up for them and a few other two because you don't know them. You don't know these other calibers of women. And yet you want to act like you're the bee's knees while there's so many of these perfectly productively good brothers that just basically need the kind of care and guidance and partnership and whatnot enough to get past the human aspects of their character and actually hone in on the productive talent into which they exist in. If there was a sign as to what caliber of female is best made for the most dysfunctional brother, Armenian. Because it wasn't her first time being a woman, but it was Kanye's first time being a husband. And no matter how much anybody would say, oh, hell no. And the time that she's had access to in his character, he's now $1 billion brother. He's a $6 billion bipolar brother. And I dare you to actually be able to tell me what person you think could be able to handle his need to go back into the state of being partnered. That poor boy is going to be $1 billion bachelor club by default. I fight with myself on a day-to-day basis on how I can best be able to relay some portion of something that would get past my exterior enough to actually maybe wake somebody up and tell them to wake them up and not go out and make these little videos of, oh my, and they're together, and so, and the woman is this and the other. And I'm sorry, with all the women this and the other, if y'all were so great, there would be less of us available and more of y'all being great with one. And it's not like men are that doggone complicated. The majority of the ones that are out here right now that have the most access to being productive doggone people in this society are partnerless. Because you're too busy going after the same exact people that can't wait until they can show you how you handle this mess with them in the first place. Not that you couldn't have a getting peace every now and then, but you got to handle your responsibility. So busy, doggone worried about what you want to get out of something that you can't realize that the importance of partnership, relationships is handling your business. It don't matter what you have to go through. You just have to be able to go through more and more of it on a consistently basis. Every old person you want to say that you value, oh, look at them. They've been together for 40, 60, 70 years. Y'all ain't ready for that. You can't basically handle knowing what a man is or what a woman is if you think that you know what they are. The whole audacity itself is one of the major things convincing you that you probably should stay by yourself because you're hard-headed, because you're so happy with God that it's too much for you to desire for more because you're good. And you're constantly good with your girlfriends when y'all go out and live and eat and loca. Praying somebody don't come and knock you off of your little pedestal with a penis. Heaven forbid that penis has more doggone attraction to penises than you do. We as people of color really ain't trying to do this. And I really wish we would, because in all my damn near 60 years, the first 20, 30, 40 of it was spent leaving that we can honestly pull this off a whole hell of a lot better than we are now. And so I'm not trying to point fingers, but damn. You know? Sometimes as black people, I really honestly hate the mere fact that they did this to us. You know, they used to have that little joke. When they wrote, you want to be a cowboy. If his woman more money and power than he got, they'll never be able to have it. And here we are. I cringe more days that I can't see more women actually being passionate about being the caliber of woman Big Mama was, and that just better than Mama and them is. It is what it is. And this is WNDC, NDC, which stands for We in the Crib. You good?